Okay, everybody. Hello, and thank you for joining PC Mall and ShoreTel's webinar, Enterprise Making the Cut Over to Mobility. My name is Justin Freck, and I'll be your host and moderator for today. Just want to cover a few quick housekeeping issues for everyone. First off, we will be recording the presentation, and we will be sending out an on-demand version to everyone. So if you have to drop off the call for any reason, you will be able to listen to the rest of the presentation. At the end of today's presentation, we'll be conducting a live Q&A session. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please use the question pane that can be found on the right-hand side of your screen. You can send the questions straight to myself, and they'll be addressed during the Q&A session. I would like to introduce our presenter. Amy Moreau she started in the wireless world at Nextel in 1998 and has been involved ever since. She started in the role of global mobility, securing deals such as Synopsys and Flextronics through the mobility solution. Amy is now considered the regional mobility specialist focused on any and all mobility and ensuring how deals go from beginning to end. She's located in California but has counterparts throughout the country for local support. Now, without any further delay, I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to Amy.
Thanks, Justin. Good morning, everyone, and to some, good afternoon to others. I appreciate everyone taking the time out to hear about ShoreTel Mobility and how it relates to certain items in regards to bring your own device. So we're just going to move right into the presentation. As Justin mentioned, there will be a Q&A session at the end, so I encourage everyone to participate. And here we go. So what are we talking about today when we say we're moving over to the mobility world? So what we're going to do is we're going to actually talk about what's happening with the mobile UC industry. And when I say UC, I relate to unified communications and what that means to you and what that means to your customers. We're going to talk about an end user value proposition, some best practices, and obviously how to engage ShoreTel Mobility through PC Mall. So we know what's happening out there. I think we can all attest to not only the smartphone world taking over, it is literally sideswiped all of us in regards to possibly not leaving home without your smartphone, without your iPad, and really knowing that this is the way communication is changing, and it's changing the way we do business today. I think, that about 10 years ago, it was the new consumer hit when people, identified with, whatever device they were using, and now it's just a normal everyday practice that is how we supply either our customers, our employees, or just and solely our own environment on how we relate day to day. So what's old? We would talk about the old phone systems, just making and receiving phone calls from your desk, being tied to a desk. I even like to relate this to our home phones. When I take a poll typically in an environment with a corporate environment, I ask how many people even have a home phone anymore. I think we're really gearing away from just being completely mobile and utilizing our mobility devices for both personal and for business, and how that can help relate into the business world to make people more efficient and more effective. And what's new? Obviously, UC, or Unified Communications Platform, and the mobile UC. So what we're seeing today on the millions of different devices that are available to us are one-to-one and many real-time conversations. We've got video, we've got messaging, we've got collaboration and conferencing. And what we're doing there is we're doing that from anywhere, from any network, utilizing any device. So technical innovation to support that need for instant communication is an industry-wide disruption. So we know that people are really trying to determine what is the best way to utilize a mobile smartphone or a mobile device to make life and or production easier out in that workspace. So what are we doing? What are we saying when we talk about mobile UC? So when we talk about this product, ShoreTel Mobility, is what I'm going to talk to you a little bit more in depth about today, is basically taking what you would normally see at your desk phone. So we've got a current desk phone that you sit at a desk, and we're extending those same functionalities. So we're extending the communication applications out to mobile devices that are enabling people to have those same capabilities from anywhere connected to any network. So what do I mean by that? So let's just say I am going to try to reach Justin, and he and I work in the same enterprise environment. I can dial Justin's 4-digit dial extension and reach him. Justin could be anywhere in the world, and I could dial his 4-digit dial and get to him directly just by having his enterprise extension. And we'll explain exactly how we're doing that in a little bit further discussion. So what are we talking about when we talk about ShoreTel Mobility and the challenges that we're trying to solve? First off, we're talking about mobile cost reduction, international roaming, overage charges, device reduction. We're talking about increased productivity, utilizing dual-mode smartphones as dual-mode devices and able to stay in communication with your employees. And we're also talking about poor in-building coverage, leveraging Wi-Fi for low-cost coverage. So how are we doing this? Basically, what ShoreTel Mobility is, it's an application, or it's a router, an appliance that sits in your data center. And with this router, you're able to leverage both public and private Wi-Fi out to your smartphone by enabling and/or cost reduction through this device. So, and also optimizing the cellular network. So what we're doing is we're actually leveraging both public and private Wi-Fi and then moving off and back and forth into the cellular mode without any disruption in the conversation. The great thing about this is that it's seamless to the end user. So for people that are actually, going about their day-to-day business, being concerned with how an application will work, there's no notification for them when they are utilizing the ShoreTel Mobility product because they will not notice whether they were on Wi-Fi or moved over to the cellular network. So we'll talk about that a little bit further. When we're talking about increased productivity, what do we mean by that? What does that look like for an end user or an enterprise customer? It means by utilizing your smartphone, which is what sales activities and end users are looking at today, is that you're utilizing that device by applying an application on there that they're able to use the mobility application over the Wi-Fi network, continually back and forth to the Wi-Fi, and therefore not necessarily losing any production as they're moving towards their business goals. We're also increasing productivity by having access for that 4-digit dialing extension. So if a person is trying to reach myself and I'm in their same enterprise company, then I'm able to be anywhere, anyhow, and receiving that call just by dialing that 4-digit extension or receiving that 4-digit extension from anyone in my company. So you don't necessarily have to be tied to your desk. You don't have to be worried about forwarding a call to your phone because you will be receiving that on your end of your smartphone. And when what do we mean by poor in-building coverage? By utilizing the ShoreTel Mobility application, what you're doing is that call is coming through that PBX, going over the ShoreTel Mobility Router, and then directing it to the end user. So when we say solving poor in-building coverage, as long as the building is outfitted with Wi-Fi, then they will be able to receive that phone call. So obviously leveraging the Wi-Fi, knowing that it is suffice, then the individual can receive that dialing call, so that 4-digit dial to their smartphone inside their enterprise building. So not being concerned with who the carrier is and knowing that they're able to still stay in communication. So what's happening? So we talk about international roaming. How do I utilize ShoreTel Mobility to help save my overall reduction of spend when it comes to cellular costs? I'm going to show you exactly how that works. So let's just say that I travel to London, and I get into my hotel building, and I know that I've got a meeting at my corporate office there. I've got a meeting with one of my customers, and I may be traveling in and out of a Starbucks or a coffee shop. When I'm over there, all I do is launch my client on my device. You typically would probably log into the corporate Wi-Fi or the hotel Wi-Fi. So what you're doing is you're actually making calls over the Wi-Fi in the hotel, avoiding all roaming costs that you would normally incur if you were traveling abroad. You're also in a coffee shop, and because we have an encrypted security inside of the appliance, then you're avoiding the cost of the overages for the internet calling at that point as well. So by leveraging the public Wi-Fi, we're not saying you're dismissing international roaming altogether. We're just saying when you're in the Wi-Fi capabilities where it is free, you're reducing those costs substantially. So what will happen then is as you leave the hotel, you will hand over back into the cellular network. So at that point, you would incur normal costs as if you would be traveling. That can also work for just the mobile users that you have at the company overall. Let's say they use a plan that, I don't know, suffices, 400 minutes a month for $100 a month per device, per user. If you have Wi-Fi within your building, you can know substantially you could decrease that amount by probably 30, 40, maybe up to 70%. That's phone replacement. The big question out there these days is, why do I even need a desk phone? I don't sit at my desk. I don't use my desk phone. It's not really relevant to my day-to-day business because I'm out in the field. So for that being said, what I say to people is, what does desk phone replacement look like to you? Is that a plan for you or your business or the company? Is that somewhere that they're headed that they would even need desk phones? I'm not saying eliminating the desk phone altogether if you can, if you can't. But what I'm saying, by utilizing ShoreTel Mobility, you will still need to remain and have a PBX system. However, it's probably less likely that you'll need to supply your outside sales team with desk phones if they work from home primarily. So we're talking about people working from home, traveling salesmen, global workers, anyone that doesn't necessarily either sit at a desk or need to remain and continue to have a desk phone for them. And then bring your own device. This is an actual indicator of what ShoreTel Mobility is doing these days. So we actually have on our roadmap a docking station that is going to be provided for those individuals that utilize ShoreTel Mobility. So what they would do is they'd actually dock their iPad and or their iPhone into that docking station and then be able to utilize the actual handset as if they were calling right from a desk phone. Basically, your mobile device becomes even more mobile but can act as a standing desk phone as if you're in the office utilizing that. So bring your own device. And another thing to add to that is, we are in a generational switch. People have widely adopted and or are moving towards the goal of bring your own device and what does that mean to them. So they want to use what they're comfortable with. They want to bring their own iPad, their own iPhone, their own Android, their own BlackBerry to the company and say, hey, this is the device I use. This is what I want to remain using when I'm conducting business. And we say to that, that's fine. Because with ShoreTel Mobility, we are PBX agnostic. By utilizing SIP, we are SIP enabled, but we are also carrier agnostic. So we support with our client BlackBerries, Androids, iPhones, and tablets. Of course, we do have a level of different types of devices that we would want to make sure that we supported. However, it does obviously play into the role of bring your own device because companies do not have to incur those extra additional costs to buy those products for their employees. If I walked into ShoreTel, I brought my iPhone, I said, this is the phone I'm utilizing. How can you help me? So I currently have my native dialer and I have my ShoreTel Mobility client, which has my work number. So that enterprise number always will continue to belong to the company. So if that person were to leave, that number would still remain with the company. So we know that the mobile worker is redefined, and we spoke a little bit about that with the international travelers and how to leverage ShoreTel Mobility over the Wi-Fi network. So we can call them road warriors, globetrotter, sales, execs. You call yourself whatever you'd like, but we are all truly mobile these days. Basically, anyone with a mobile phone, obviously connected through apps. So what do we talk about when we say the mobile impact? What are we looking at, really? We're talking about additional 240 hours worked per year by a mobile worker over non-connected workers. We're talking workers who use their smartphone during downtime. We're talking about mobile workers that use a tablet for work. And then obviously mobile workers with smartphones. Mobile workers with tablets, and then mobile workers that are enabled to enterprise and that are provided by the enterprise network. So we do know that there is an infiltration of people utilizing the phone. I make the joke of two people at dinner, and typically both of them are looking down at their phones, either conducting business, whether it be personal or business. So we do know that we can always make a little chuckle about that because I think we all see it more often than not. And then we have, obviously, the enterprise space has embraced mobility. So they're saying up to 50% of the total deployment when it comes to mobility that they're utilizing either a smartphone or a tablet. So we do know that people are bringing what they feel most comfortable with and are making their own personal investment to utilize what they feel most comfortable in the day-to-day space. So what's our end user value proposition? With ShoreTel Mobility, we are solving these three distinct issues. We're reducing mobile costs by less roaming, fewer overages, reducing devices by leveraging both public and private Wi-Fi. We're also increasing productivity so that an individual can use their smartphone to conduct business while having their personal line and their business line on one device. And then we're also talking about in-building coverage. So leveraging that Wi-Fi within that campus environment by going through the mobility or the router appliance out to the mobility, through the mobility and onto that device, that smartphone, the client. So obviously staying in contact with the remote workers without struggling through the in-building issue. So let's talk about mobility and enterprise IT. What's on their mind? First of all, let's talk about control. So when we talk about control, because the mobility client and or the device or the client belongs to the company, that they can determine who and when that's the client on their device. So they're able to manage how it's distributed, who receives them, what device they have. Basically, all they're doing is they're knowing how they're able to manage this application for delivery. And there's also an administrator portal. So for those IT people, they're able to determine minutes over VoIP, so voice over IP. We have in our next release coming out very shortly, there'll be an international page where they can see the actual roaming that was saved. There's end user capabilities, so you can actually manage when you receive a call and when you want to receive calls or when they don't want to receive calls. So it really is a great tool for the network IT guys to be able to determine how the client is going to be utilized. And then cost savings. By having the bring your own device play, people are making their own personal investments to bring into the company on what they feel most comfortable with. So therefore, it's not costing the enterprise the additional dollars as it would to actually provide different devices. And then security. We'll talk a little bit about that, but basically what has happened is there is a VPN tunnel created directly into the appliance, and it's over an AES 256-bit encryption. So we can ensure you that it is protected and that it is a secure tunnel that is going out. So every time a call is made, it is going over a secure network. So let's talk about the product. There are 3 different flavors of the ShoreTel Mobility Router. One that supports 100 users, one that supports 1,000, and then another that supports up to the 5,000. So as we spoke before, we are PBX agnostic as well as carrier agnostic. And as you get up to the 4,000 and the 6,000, we kind of move over to the enterprise grade. So people that are concerned with having high availability, redundancy, those are available in the higher scales of the mobility router. And then we talk about the client. We have the different devices that we support up there. We've got the iPads. We've got the BlackBerry. We've got the Android. We even support Nokia. So it just shows you the different devices that we're able to use. And because it is one client, what ShoreTel has done is they've actually paid the rights to both Android, iPhone, as well as RIM to the user interface to look exactly like what they're used to. With Apple, it is a little bit different. It is a second, there is a native dialer, and then there's actually the ShoreTel Mobility client, but that is because Apple's APIs are a little bit more strict than some of the other providers. And then you can see below there, again, being PBX agnostic allows us to really work in an environment outside of the norm. So when people hear ShoreTel, they probably naturally think, oh, ShoreTel system. No, we just want to be clear that, again, we are able to, we're comparable with Cisco, we've got ShoreTel, Nortel, Alcent, Avaya. So just know, as long as it is SIP-enabled or we have the capability to make it SIP-enabled. So when we talk about that, that's a little bit more in depth, but typically we look at that with a PRI or a voice gateway. So again, hybrid user interface. So what we're talking about when we're extending those calls from that PBX phone out to that smartphone, again, we're talking about the native user interface look. So with the iPhone, it will look like the iPhone. With a BlackBerry, it'll look like a BlackBerry. Again, allowing the end user to feel comfortable that it looks and feels as if it were the native dialer. And with the actual BlackBerry and the Android, you have the opportunity for the native, for it to take over the native dialer. So you can just press a little button and it'll bring up the ShoreTel Mobility client and you're off and running. With the Apple iPhone, like I mentioned, and or the iPad, it is a separate icon, and that again is due to Apple's APIs. So here we are. This just kind of extends it out a little bit more. So when we talk about extending the capabilities of that desk phone out to the end user. So that smartphone, you have some similarities to what you're used to. So we've got extension dialing, transfer and hold, do not disturb, simultaneous ring, business dial, personal dial. And when we're talking about ShoreTel Mobility, one of the distinctions I'd like to mention is the automatic handover. So the way that I would explain that is if I'm in my home office, which I am on my ShoreTel Mobility client over my home Wi-Fi, if I leave my home and get into my car, the client will automatically know and hand over to the cellular network because I'm no longer in the same company of my home Wi-Fi. So it has the intelligence to hand over. And the same goes true if I step back in from the outside cellular world. As soon as I pull into my garage, it will automatically pick up that Wi-Fi signal and hand over to the Wi-Fi within my home. Because the mobility appliance or the router looks at Wi-Fi as being the least cost way to route the calls, it will always suggest the Wi-Fi first. What you can also do with end user intent is actually force a handover. So basically the Wi-Fi is determined by, the handover is determined by quality of service of the Wi-Fi or packet loss. But if you know you're leaving your home and you want to just hand over now, you can hand over. It is probably less than a second delay and you'll be on your call. So you have that option to do that as well. But if you don't, it's okay. It will automatically do it for you. Another great aspect that ShoreTel Mobility has is the corporate directory access. So I think a lot of times when people are traveling and or out and about and they don't necessarily have access to their Outlook or your Lotus Notes to look up a contact within your company that you currently don't have in your personal dial, there is a corporate directory which integrates with LDAP or Active Directory where you can look up anyone inside of that company directory. So it really makes it very convenient if you're out and about and you need to contact someone internally that you don't typically have their extension on you. And then we also have the presence feature. We currently integrate with OCS and Link for presence. So just another way for you to maintain and or stay in communication with your enterprise group. And then we're just going to talk a little bit about the iPad and the iPad 2. We can probably all share that if we don't have one, we necessarily know someone who has one. And currently we do have the mobility application on there as well. What's coming in the future for us is because it is such a large screen, we are going to start taking advantage of the landscape that the interface provides. So we'll be introducing presence. You'll be able to click and drag conference calls. We'll have video. So a lot of things that are actually, on our roadmap for people to get excited about, because they'll know that this is really kind of where the enterprise market and or individuals are going to. So just some good information for the future. And again, we talked about a docking station. So for those individuals who like to feel and stay comfortable with having a desk phone feel, just know with the docking station that they could actually pick that receiver up and scan a call. It actually even moves from landscape to horizontal so that you can kind of move it as you feel if you want to watch a video or things like that. So it is a really, really great, beautiful design. Again, it is not out currently. However, that is on our roadmap as well. And then let's talk a little bit about personal and business calling. So the way the distinction is throughout the device is through business and personal. So however you determine that you put that person in your contact list. So if I put my mom and have her as personal, then she will always come over my personal dialer. So just know, however you put that individual into your device, it will distinctively note either come through the Shore Tel Mobility Router out to the client, or if it's a personal, it'll just come through your personal dialer on your regular device as well. So the distinction is to determine whether it's a business or personal, but just know that that's how the calls are routed, so you'll be able to determine who it is. And then this just kind of extends that a little bit. So basically what I just mentioned. So if you're sharing or personal or marked. So basically you've got that ability to segregate and or to determine who is who for your mobility app. And then this basically just shows you how it extends voice over IP to the mobile devices. So you can actually see in the middle we've got a ShoreTel PBX, but again, that could be Cisco PBX. And then you see to the right, you've got the mobility router. So you can see how things go through that. When you've got the trunk or SIP enabled through a trunk, you can actually hand that call over. So it basically gives you kind of how things are laid out for you as well. And again, keep in mind that their secure VPN tunnel is created directly into the appliance so that every call that is made is going over an encrypted VPN tunnel. And then again, this just explains a little bit more when we spoke about presence, how we integrate with OCS and Link, and how that moves out through the devices as well. Again, so basically we're going to just sum this up to share about leadership capabilities. So again, we are PBX agnostic as well as carrier agnostic, and some of the things that attribute to Shore Tel Mobility are our secure remote technology. We talked about cellular cost optimization by leveraging both public and private Wi-Fi, therefore decreasing the costs that normal cellular bills would come in on. We're talking about global readiness so that when you are traveling, you are able to 4-digit dial like you typically would from your desk phone. We're talking about cell and battery management by Wi-Fi handling, so therefore not putting all the drain on your batteries. And then native mobile platform support. So end user, it takes over the native dialer again with the BlackBerry and the Android, and then having the same user interface with the iPad and the iPhone so that it looks and feels what you're used to. Again, user interface integration. And then just know if you're ever out and about and you receive a 911 call, it will always, always come over to the mobile network. So core attributes of the solution, again, scaling and resiliency. So you can mix and match the different routers depending on how you position them, and they basically fit right in the data center. One router is about the size of one RU, so it doesn't take up too much space. Again, multi-client support running a BlackBerry, iPhone, Nokia's, and Winmo. Simple user interface. Again, we want people to feel comfortable and or used to what they've got, so that user interface integration eliminates, any kind of learning curve for the end user. Presence integrated with the native dialer interface, so people that would like to see what's happening out there. And then simple deployment and management. So now no dial plan changes, no PBX upgrades. So if you conduct business with a company that has an older PBX, as long as we're able to create or make that SIP enabled, then we should be able to utilize ShoreTel Mobility. And then obviously OTA, push for initial provisioning and updates. So just allowing that end user to feel comfortable with how they actually utilize the device. And these are what we call our big eight. So just covering the same information again. So we got the cellular remote technology, cost we talk about, being global, as well as cellular battery and data management, handling the Wi-Fi by seamless handover from the Wi-Fi to the cellular network, native platform integration, and then obviously the voice over Wi-Fi emergency calls. So again, just know we are PBX agnostic, carrier agnostic. And that is it. So what I would say to our individuals out there are, what are we looking for when you're identifying opportunities? I would say ask about the PBX replacement or international roaming. People identify with bring your own device, or what are your plans when it comes to unified communications? So that's basically the end of the presentation. I'm sure we'll be open to questions. So thank you, everyone, for attending today.
Okay, thanks, Amy. We actually also have on the phone, didn't know he was going to join us, but our PC Mall, Dan Jackman, who Dan, I just want to give you a chance to introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Dan Jackman. I'm the PC Mall Solutions Engineer responsible for the ShoreTel products. So if there's any questions, please just let us know. I'm more than happy to answer anything you have.
We actually had a question here about the desk phone replacement.
Yes.
Can this replace the desk phone completely?
PBX is still required. So what we have seen are limiting them to, and/or we actually are moving to a cloud base. We just purchased a company, M5, so we are going to be able to offer it in the cloud at some point too, so that could help, alleviate some issues, and obviously keep that in the cloud for the people that didn't want to either remove their PBX altogether or not have to invest in one.
Okay, and then what does the 12-month ROI look like on these?
Great question. So we pretty much guarantee about a 12-month ROI. So it really depends on where we're gathering that information. So if it's an international bills, I mean, I've seen them as low as 3 months, because what we're doing is we basically take that amount, average it over 3 months, and how many devices make up that amount, and then determine that with install and or support included. So it really would depend on what we were trying to do for the customer, and if they put a price on productivity. But when you're talking about the international roaming, that's pretty explicit. So it would just depend on what that looked like. So my recommendation, if they are calling on people or working with customers that have large international bills, is to just have them provide that information. They don't need to share who the carrier is. They just need to provide the amount, and then we can go from there.
Okay. I think that's it in the question front, unless somebody else has some other questions. But we will provide some contact information for you guys to get in touch with us if you think of something offline, or you go back to your desk and think of something. And then you can just send it to us, and we'll get it to the right person to answer. And I think the only last bit of business is we were going to give away a $50 gift card today, and it looks like it's going to Whitney Jones. Okay. Whitney will go ahead and contact you, so congratulations, Whitney. And then Amy, thanks for presenting, and and hanging out with us for a little bit. And thanks, everyone, for attending.
Great. Thank you, Justin. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.